The Los Angeles Rams are rolling, and the 49ers season looks like it's finally come to an end. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Louie DiBiase. On today's show, we're going to talk about some West Coast action with the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Green Bay Packers. We also got to talk about some big-time matchups where I like the underdogs in the Bills and the Steelers, but we will start with an ugly, ugly win for the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday Night Football. Before we get into it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. I've been talking about them all week, Louie. The Los Angeles Rams are rolling, and I don't think they're just playoff contenders. I think they're Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, and I think with this loss, the 49ers' playoff hopes are all but dead, or pretty much completely dead at this point.
Yeah, they're looking like they're in a rough spot, but we'll talk about some of the mistakes that happened there. We got to talk about the winners first in the Los Angeles Rams, and my guy Doug McCain from Locked On Rams broke down the win.
It wasn't the prettiest win, but it was a beautiful win for the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams beat the 49ers 12-6. They improved to 8-6 on the season, and now this Rams team that started 1-4 has won 7 of their last 9 games and have over a 50% chance of making the playoffs. So you end the 49ers playoff hopes tonight, and you greatly improve your own. And I'm here to tell you, this Rams team can play with any team in the NFL. You just beat the red-hot Buffalo Bills, scored 44 against them. You come back on a short week and you win against the 49ers up in San Francisco when they still had their playoff hopes alive. So do not let this Rams team get hot, because they could be one of the more dangerous teams heading into the playoffs. You have a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Matthew Stafford, a Super Bowl winning head coach in Sean McVay. Puka Nacua is playing at a Pro Bowl, all-pro level again. Cooper Kupp is looking better. The defense is emerging with young players. Don't let this Rams team get hot. Nobody's going to want to play the Rams in the playoffs.
I think that's 100% right from Doug there. They're a team that really has everything, and as they proved tonight, part of the reason that I know that this is an ugly win, again, 12-6, ugly game, wasn't the most appealing to watch on television. I get all that. But the Rams proved that they can win any type of match. If you want to make it a shootout, then they're going to be able to play that game like they played last week. You want to make it a physical matchup and 3 yards in a cloud of dust, well, we're going to hand the ball off to Kyron Williams, and he's going to be able to get yards, and we're going to throw our quick little short screens and let our guys do work after the catch. I just really love the makeup of this Rams team, and when you see their talent start to really gel together, they could be a dangerous, dangerous team. So that's why I had them as a Super Bowl sleeper earlier this week when they aren't even in the playoffs yet, because you could see it building.
Yeah, Tyler, I cover the Philadelphia Eagles. I would not want to see the Los Angeles Rams in the first round. And I think you see Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, you think of that star-filled Super Bowl Rams team, and you think pass-heavy finesse. But like you said, they showed today they can win the gritty defensive battles as well. They are healthy in the trenches on both sides, and I think they have one of the most underrated young defensive lines in football, led by Jared Verse and Kobe Turner. Multiple sacks today, leads the league in pressures against double teams. Like, this Rams team, don't let them get hot in the postseason. I really do think they're a sleeper giant.
Yeah, it all comes down to that offensive line, and their offensive line has started to get healthier in recent weeks. If they hit full capacity near the end of the season going in the playoffs, they could be trouble. And I do just want to take one moment out here to say that there was some debate about Sean McVay taking that field goal at the end, and maybe he should have gone for it to ice the game. In that situation, I just want to say I love the field goal there, because if you go for it and you don't get it, well, now the 49ers only need a field goal to tie it.
Right.
They only have to go so many yards to get in field goal range to tie it. I would much rather be up 6, even though it's not up 7, and have them have to go 25, 30, 40 yards, 50 yards, whatever it is to the end zone, even how it worked out with the penalty in the kickoff return, because at the end of the day, you only have 15 seconds. So I think it was the right move to take that. I know it's kind of a random tangent there, but on the San Francisco side of things, as we talked about, it's the Super Bowl hangover, man. They've been playing so long. They're too banged up. Deebo Samuel complaining and then dropping that pass. Like the interception by Brock Purdy, what is he doing there? Does Jawan Jennings kind of stop on the route, it looked like? They just haven't had any cohesion all year long, and to me, it's just part of that Super Bowl hangover where it's just hard to continue to play high-level football that many years in a row.
Yeah, I was going to say, this isn't just 1 year of build-up, Tyler. The 49ers have been consistently getting into the Final Four, if you will, conference championship Super Bowls for, it feels like 6 years now, or pretty much since Kyle Shanahan has taken over as the head coach. And yeah, it just feels like, I don't want to say this is the last year of that core's contention window, but this year, especially after the Super Bowl loss and all the injuries, I just think it's too much. And if they would have won this game, yeah, they would have had a pretty good-looking chance of even winning the division, maybe catching Washington for the wild card. But I think this loss pretty much puts them down because you have two hot teams in that division ahead of you now, Seattle and LA. So they had to have this one, and it's too much to handle.
Yeah, they've lost too many division games, too. I believe that's 4 on the season, and you're not going to win any tiebreakers with that. It makes it so difficult to have a path forward. I do want to bring back up something that Michelle Majuk, the data queen, brought up yesterday. I do believe it was on yesterday's show that every year where the 49ers have had a down year, a really down year, the year they got beat, the year that resulted in Nick Bosa, the year where they traded up for Trey Lance, the year after, Kyle Shanahan always has his team bounce back and ready to go. So I think Kyle Shanahan's kind of like a phoenix. He burns to ash and then is reborn from it. So I think this is a phoenix year for Kyle Shanahan where he needs to just burn it down to ashes so that he can rebuild out of that, if that makes sense.
No, it totally doesn't. I just feel like I've seen so many teams have this kind of season right after a Super Bowl loss. So if they get healthy next year, I don't think they're going to be the same dominant team you've seen over, the 2022 to 2023 run, but there's still so many pieces on this team where I don't think after this season, suddenly this version of the 49ers, this era is completely dead.
No, I think they just need to kind of retool things,
Yeah.
Maybe cut some dead weight that they have, Deebo Samuel being one of those things for sure. So with that, I think that they can move forward and not have to tear it all the way down, but they're going to have to pay Purdy, and that'll make things more.
You kind of got to do what the Rams did, Tyler, right?
Kind of have to sacrifice some things,
let
things go, move on. Got to hit in the draft to repair.
That's the big part.
That's really what it comes down to. And San Francisco has had some pretty good success there. So I expect them to be back, but it's certainly not their year. But with that being said, a lot of great games on the slate this week. All teams back in action. It's kind of making up for last week's slate as well. It's a FanDuel Friday. We're going to give you our best bets of the weekend. And there's a little bit of a madman matchup with me and Louie and disagree a little bit on one of these bets. Can't wait to dive into that. It's Locked On NFL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, you can score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it even easier to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners can get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, Louie, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about that ugly but very, very important Thursday night football game that took place. But now let's move on to some of these other great games we got ahead of us this weekend. And we are going to start with the Buffalo Bills at the Detroit Lions. And I got to tell you, I know this may be going against the grain, but I like the Bills plus 2.5 in this game on FanDuel. And I think one of the ways that the Bills can get there is aggressiveness on offense. And that's what my guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills talked about on Crossover Thursday.
Number one is being aggressive on offense. We talked about some of the matchup challenges that the Bills can present based on personnel. And obviously the Lions do have a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the football. Still a good unit, still, high performing. They got dudes, man, and they're well coached. Nothing but respect for Detroit and the entire operation. But if there's going to be a path for Buffalo in this game, I think it's going to be aggressive offense that not only maybe takes advantage of some matchups that are in the Bills' favor, but like I said, help your run defense by maybe getting Detroit to not run the ball a million times against you, and the Bills can obviously be had against the ground.
I think that you match aggressiveness with aggressiveness. The Bills or the Lions blitz a ton. They play man coverage. And who can kill you when you're doing that? Josh Allen. So I think this is a close game, but I think Josh Allen makes a play at the end to take advantage of the aggressive Lions defense. I like the Bills plus 2.5. And if you're looking for teaser legs this week, teasing the Bills up to 8.5. I absolutely adore that as a teaser leg as well. But I like Bills plus 2.5.
Yeah, I like it too. And I think Detroit eventually, you look at them, Philadelphia, somebody's got to beat these teams in the NFC at the top. And I think the Buffalo Bills are coming off a shootout loss against the Rams where Sean McDermott, that's the worst his defense has looked in a very long time. Even with as good as Detroit is, I can't imagine a Sean McDermott defense looks that bad 2 weeks in a row. So I think if somebody's going to finally take down the Lions this year, it's going to be potentially the MVP favorite in Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So I agree with this pick.
And a team that has the ability to run the football, because Detroit doesn't see a lot of teams that have offensive lines that are kind of close to them, and Buffalo's offensive line has been absolutely fantastic this year. So I think that's what will make it a close game no matter what. So give me the points and give me Josh Allen, and we'll see what happens with that one. Moving right along, though, another great game this weekend taking place. And it's a game, Louie, that you might know a little bit about. And I hate to say it, not really. I love to say it. I'm taking the Steelers plus 5.5. You do not give the Pittsburgh Steelers that many points. And I know that we're going to get your side of it. But here's what my guy Chris Carter had to say about how the Steelers can pull this one off.
I think one element that's going to be really crucial here, if you look back at how the Steelers attacked the Bengals defense, not good. It's like the worst defense in the NFL. But the Bengals defense tried to overcommit to two factors. They wanted to stuff the run, and they wanted to take away the deep ball. You saw early in the half, and I wrote about this in the Post Gazette last week. They deployed like 3/4 of their defense was basically two high safeties, but the linebackers and the defensive line, their first steps were crush the run. So they were going to say, hey, Russell Wilson, we know you like the deep ball. Hey, Steelers, we know you like Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. So we're going to take away both, and you're going to have to beat us by working the short passing game.
Intermediate, yeah.
And then that's what Russell Wilson did. He was like, all right, here. And then eventually the Bengals like, oh, man, all right, we got to go to one high safety. And then all of a sudden, bang, deep down the field, big plays, and then it opens up the Steelers' offense a bit more. That's where the Eagles' defense is going to have to win.
I think the Eagles' defense is going to win, and they're going to win a lot. But I think the Steelers' defense is going to win, and they're going to win a lot too, especially against a guy like Jalen Hurts who holds the football. I think TJ Watt is going to be able to make some crucial plays that keep this close, even though the Eagles' offense ultimately outplays the Steelers' offense. I don't know if the Steelers win this game outright, but I love 5.5. I think it'll be a closer game than that.
Yeah, that handsome guy on the left didn't really get a chance to defend himself as Chris was talking, so I'll do it for him. I think the Eagles will win this game, but the 5.5, I actually agree, Tyler. I think they will cover that. For me, the Eagles' drama this week of really trying to fix the passing game, I think they're going to add an emphasis and some urgency on trying to fix that. The Steelers' defense, though, we know how good they are. I think it will be a one-score game in Philly. So I think I like the Eagles' money line, but I agree with you. Like, that's a lot of points to give Pittsburgh. Like, this is it's America's game of the week for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that George Pickens is going to be out. And to me, that like significantly impacts how I feel about the Steelers. But again, I think the Steelers defense is going to make some plays and cause some turnovers to help keep them in it. And I'm with you. And we're in lockstep of the fact that I think the Eagles are going to win the game. But 5.5 is just way too many points.
I agree.
In my opinion. I am curious about that Eagles drama, though, because, A.J. Brown, as I know, can be a cantankerous personality. He's a guy who wants the football. Usually when you get him the football, you end up winning. So I guess I do understand it from his point. But at the end of the day, you're on a 9-game winning streak. So do you think kind of the drama that's happened in Philly this week with Brandon Graham and the A.J. Brown comments, do you think that will have an impact on how they maybe start the game or the entire game, or what impact do you think it'll have?
I think it will have a positive impact on this team, but I think what you'll see early on is an added emphasis on getting number 11 the ball. I think they are going to try to be aggressive and get A.J. Brown some deep shots. I don't think suddenly they're going to throw the ball 30 to 40 plus times in this matchup. They're not going to abandon their identity, and they shouldn't. Saquon Barkley is an MVP favorite for a reason, but I do think what Brown was saying this week about the passing game needing to be better is true. I just think the efficiency has to be better. I don't think suddenly the volume has to be higher.
And I think you start playing a dangerous game when you're like, hey, we have to force the ball to this one person.
You don't want to do that.
Defenses can load up on that.
Right.
You got to take what's available to you and be curious to see what kind of matchup the Steelers have for A.J. Brown, Joey Porter Jr., maybe a shadow there. He'll get real physical at the line of scrimmage. And if they're trying to get, the ball to A.J. Brown on these quick timing routes just to make it easy, you can't guarantee a big shot play that you're going to be able to get him to him. But if you hit him on a bunch of quick routes, then you'll probably make sure that you have a higher rate of success getting him the football. But if JPJ is going to be in his grill and pressing at the line of scrimmage, trying to disrupt some of that timing, then you could catch Jalen Hurts holding the ball in a situation where you're supposed to get rid of it quick. Then TJ Watt makes a play. That's just kind of what I'm envisioning in my head, I guess.
And I think Devontae Smith's on the other side too, so I think they need to be A.J. Brown's right. They need to be better in the passing game, but I don't think they need to get A.J. Brown the ball more. He is still producing at a very efficient clip this year. I just think the efficiency of the passing game as a whole needs to be better. And I think that is what he meant in his comment earlier this week when he just said what needs to be better, and he said one word, passing. But again, when you leave it just in a one-word statement, you leave it up for the media to pretty much interpret what you meant. So that was on Brown, and that's kind of where the drama came from.
Yeah, but,
I'm sure he meant targets too in a way, though.
Yeah, A.J. Brown kind of reminds me of Jerry Jones. He just, whether it's good or it's bad, he just needs to be involved in the conversation some way. But honestly, you look around the history of wide receivers, and that's what you're looking
Tends
for.
To be
that's how you know they're a winner. Yeah. So hard to complain about the production or the antics from A.J. Brown. But with that being said, we got some matchups on the west side of the country that are very interesting. And one matchup that me and Louie don't see eye to eye. So we're going to get into that. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And look, it's FanDuel Friday here on the Locked On NFL podcast, giving you our best bets of the week. And it makes it a perfect time to take on the final month of the NFL regular season on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can open up the FanDuel Sportsbook app, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I really like drive bets on FanDuel where you can bet basically whether it'll be a field goal, a touchdown, a punt at the end of the drive. Really enjoy those. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Louie, we're going to cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about that Thursday night football game. Now getting into some FanDuel Friday picks. Talked about the Bills and the Lions. Talked about the Steelers and the Eagles, a keystone matchup there. But now we got to move to the west side of the country before we do. Thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed on whatever platform you do. Tune in and check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins in the barbershop as well. But we'll start with another really, really big game, and a game that ties in directly to our Thursday night game, and it's the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Green Bay Packers. And Louie, I got to tell you, in this one, I really like Seattle plus 2.5 at home. And I think running the football is going to be key. And, I think that's exactly what they talked about on Crossover Thursday with Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Packers.
For me, protecting Geno Smith is more about running the football.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, Green Bay's been pretty darn good against the run game this year.
Yeah.
But it feels like, again, that this identity is starting to form a little bit for the Seahawks. And they don't need to run for 170 yards again like they did this last game against Arizona. But Arizona had the number one rushing defense in the last 5 weeks going into that game. And they were able to get their gap schemes going. They were able to physically maul the Cardinals up front. They were able to get out in space and create some plays with Zach Charbonnet. Who knows if Ken Walker III's available, but that is going to be the key for me because I think Geno Smith can get the ball downfield against this Packers defense, and I think he can attack the middle of the field with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is turning into a top 10 receiver right in front of our eyes. He's as good at carving people up over the middle as any receiver in the NFL right now. They want to be able to take advantage of that, though. They're going to have some semblance of a run game to take some of that pressure off of Geno Smith.
Seattle's just been so good up front on both sides of the ball. Here recently on defense, led by Leonard Williams, of course. He's just been playing outstanding football. And I think the offensive line will be able to get some movement in the run game against Green Bay in this one. And I think that does open up play action. So I like what Corbin is laying out there. And I think that Seattle, I don't know if they win this game, but games are always weird as all get out when the Packers play the Seahawks in Seattle. I think this is going to be an incredibly close game, like 21-20, something like that. So I love the Seahawks at home plus 2.5. And another game where I think this is an excellent teaser leg. If you can get 6 points and tease the Seahawks up to 8.5, I don't care what you pair it with, whether you like, I like the Steelers as a teaser leg. I like the Bills as a teaser leg. Like whatever you like there, that's a great teaser leg for you because there's no way this game is going to be further apart than Seahawks plus 8.5.
Yeah, we were talking about how the NFL, I feel like, is still sleeping on the Rams, and I feel like it's kind of a similar theme with Seattle and pretty much that entire division. The one good thing, too, about the Seahawks starting to get going in the run game is it also helps their pass protection, right? I think that's the one thing about the Seahawks is like, man, if they just had given Geno Smith a little more time over the last few years, they have a really good roster that I like a lot. And I think that's why they've been pretty hot over the last few games, a couple massive wins against Arizona in the division. I like that 2.5 as well. And I think the Seahawks are going to probably win this game outright. It's going to be that's a fun game on primetime.
Yeah, I think it's a possibility they do win the game just in general. So I love getting the 2.5 points there. We're on the same page with that. Seattle's playing better football than they're given credit for. And I think the Packers are just a touch overrated. Just a touch. And they make stupid mistakes because they're a young team. So I look for them to do that in a tough environment to play in. But we finally move to the Denver Broncos against the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll take you guys a peek behind the curtain here. Reached out to Louie, asked him what kind of bets he was looking for. And he told me that he likes the Colts in this matchup. Plus 3.5.
I do.
And I like the Broncos minus 3.5 in this one. But before we explain why, my guy Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts explained what he thinks the two biggest advantages the Colts have in this game are.
You know, we've seen what it was when Joe Flacco was back there. It's night and day. You have a sitting duck in Joe Flacco versus a guy who is able to escape just about anything with Richardson. So I think that'll be huge. That'll allow him to buy a little more time to find Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, maybe Michael Pittman Jr. in this. But, you know, the Colts have had this bye week to look at, you know, that you mentioned Levi Wallace, Chris Abrams drain. Have they found something they think they can really exploit? I don't think if the Colts are going to win this, I don't think it's going to be like an ugly, low-scoring thing. They're probably going to have to trade shots a little bit like the Browns game. That was kind of exciting, but like you mentioned, didn't need to be that close. But with a defense like this, I think the Colts do have an X factor, and that's a slot receiver in Josh Downs, who I think could be a bit of a zone buster. And then they've got Anthony Richardson, who can avoid those sacks.
So just why do you like the Colts in this game?
That's part of my logic is Anthony Richardson's mobility against one of the more underrated pass rushers in football. And I like the desperation pick. Like, the Colts have to win this game. They're 6-7. The Broncos are 2 games up right now with that 7th spot in the AFC. It's practically a playoff game for Indianapolis. Yeah. They're coming off a bye week, so they know how important the game is. They've had a whole week of rest and time to prep. I think Anthony Richardson, the numbers don't look great, but I think he's been really good in the fourth quarter of these games. I think it's going to come down to a possession or two, and I think it's some of it's a heart pick for sure. I want to see a young guy that got benched come back and lead his team to an important victory, but I really do think the Colts have some advantages here, and I don't think Denver is a paper tiger. They're fake with what their record is, but I think, like you mentioned, how the Packers might be a tad bit overrated. I think Denver is maybe getting a little overrated right now for who they actually are.
That's fair. Here's what I think on it. Anthony Richardson is gonna have some turnover worthy plays.
That's fair.
And I think Denver at home in their environment with their defense, they play with such discipline. Like, they're so well coached. I think they're going to be in spots. They're going to take things away. And Anthony Richardson's going to create a couple of turnovers that help the Broncos out. And the Broncos are going to be able to get up. And I think when the Broncos get up, Anthony Richardson and the run game is a bit neutralized. Sure. And I just believe it comes down to, I believe that the Denver Broncos defense is going to be sound enough to not be completely fooled by the quarterback run game. So for me, I think both offenses will have the ability to score a little bit. I think Anthony Richardson being able to throw those deep passes is where the Broncos are vulnerable. If you can get it past 2.5 seconds and attack downfield on them, you can get some things going. But I just feel like if I have to trust one of these defenses, I'm definitely going to trust Denver's. So I think Denver wins the game by more than 3.5. I think they win by like 4 or 7. Something like that, because they get some turnovers and get a lead early, and Indy makes it interesting at the end, but Denver holds on.
It's crazy, too, because if the Colts don't win this game, Tyler, like, there's not a lot of close playoff races at the end of the season. And normally with, a 7-seed playoff, like, you'll have a lot of teams still in it. But if the Colts lose this, I don't want to say you pretty much know for sure who's in the postseason, but you kind of do at this point. With the Niners losing today, too, things are starting to clear up across the league.
No, I think the NFC West between Seattle and Los Angeles, and the NFC South between the Falcons and the Bucks.
That might be
Those are the only real things that are kind of up in the air, other than seeding. Like, maybe Minnesota comes back on the Lions if the Bills win. You know what I mean? They play Week 18.
Exactly.
Little things like that. But the teams that are actually going to make it, I mean, there hasn't been one of the big things this year in the NFL that I think is a headline we'll see people talk about a lot in the offseason is the vanishment. I don't know if that's a real word, the vanishment of the middle class in the NFL. Like, it seems like there's a lot of really good teams and a lot of really, really bad teams, and the middle class isn't quite there. And I think that's contributing to the lack of playoff excitement here and unknown.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally true, because 7 seeds, there's a lot of opportunity for teams to make the postseason. So it's not like there's not enough playoff spots for these football teams. So I think you're right. There's a lot of really, really good this year and a lot of really, really bad.
Yeah, and that'll make for some interesting playoff matchups, because a lot of the teams will be good teams. There won't be a lot of fake teams in the playoffs this year, which will make it interesting.
You won't see the 2-7 blowout game, right? I think the 7 seeds this year will probably have a much better chance than they have in years past.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, imagine if it's like Steelers Broncos. I might be hitting the Broncos with the points.
Right, or Eagles Rams. Like, that's a good game.
Yep, 100%. So that's around the river bend, but we got a good weekend ahead of us here. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Louie DiBiase. As we tell you every single episode, stay safe out there.